Hey, we're right after the July 4th, Independence Day. I got my pride going on here for the U.S. men's and women's national teams. I think the men's national team is playing right at the conclusion of this show today. So for all you soccer fans out there, I don't know what you're doing here. We're here for Connect This. So we are going to launch into a really fun show today. It's about time. We had the crew all back. I think it's been a month since we had the crew all together here. So we are back together. I am saturated with light. You can almost see through me, I feel like, with this video setup. And I am excited to talk about all the topics we have today. But let's get back with asking Doug. How are you doing, Doug? Welcome back.
Well, apparently I have a new title. Just so everyone watching this, all three of you know, I don't pick these titles. So today I'm a soothsayer. So any sooth you need, Travis, I'm going to give it to you.
I love
You're
it.
just testing my lisp. Welcome back, Doug. I actually presented this morning on the Benton Accelerate program, and I think I came shortly after you did. So hopefully I haven't done too much damage to whatever wisdom you left them with.
Oh, that's a good group. I like those folks. Yep. So.
We got Kim McKinley from UTOPIA Fiber. Welcome back, Kim.
I thought that I was just pushing a link to go to Amazon Prime for Prime Day, but I just ended up here. So it's a little bit different than I thought, but here I am.
Today's Anti-Monopoly Day, not Prime Day. Fun story.
Gosh. I know.
Kim,
you're just ruining my fun.
I think on our last show, you were literally getting an upgrade during the show. You got upgraded on that flight out of Tahoe, I want to say. For the fiber to the home event?
No, I didn't get the
Fiber
upgrade out of Tahoe. I got it out of like 7 a.m. out of Seattle to Sacramento. So the flight that nobody wants, I got the upgrade. So no. That thanks for noticing that I've gotten one upgrade in this year. Over 30 flights, one upgrade.
Travis, welcome back. I think you just got back from the Hoosier State.
Well, I want to apologize to the soccer. What are they called? The national soccer team for
U.S. men's national team, U.S. women's national team.
I want to apologize for taking their other fan away from them right now. So, yes. So I believe right now the rankings are Connect This is being watched by more people than the soccer people. So there you go. I didn't even know we had a soccer team, Mr. Mitchell.
Not only that, we apparently have a beach soccer team. One of the players for a Minnesota women's professional team called Aurora just got called up. And I was like, where'd you get called up to? And got called up to the national beach soccer team. So we've got a lot of national teams apparently.
Yeah, but I do have a little soccer trivia for you. I did go to Old Trafford and watch Manchester United play one time. So there you go.
Yeah, no, so everyone's aware, Travis is not a big fan of sports, but he knows when he has an opportunity to see something cool. Like when there was that the hurricane was hitting Tampa Bay, and it looked like that Tom Brady might be playing here in Minnesota unexpectedly. We were going to go to it if that happened, even though you could care less about football.
I also saw Michael Jordan play in person, so that was my big sports thing.
Yeah. So people are here to hear us talk about broadband and either make fun of us or rage watch or say, yeah, that's what I think too. And I wanted to launch off with kicking around the federal government a little bit because what's better to kick off a show than that? And this is something that actually just came across my radar this morning, so I threw it into the queue. And I think there's a discussion. There's actually a bill proposed to basically force the federal government to have a cohesive digital divide, digital equity strategy because different parts of the government have different ideas about it. And I looked at it and I was like, who cares? I feel like, Doug, that was your reaction too.
No, actually, my reaction's stronger than that. Please do not do that is my reaction. The federal government's never had a broadband policy that turned into anything tangible. And so, I mean, how many good things did you get out of our last national broadband plan?
Well, it had a lot of good ideas. It's just that none of them were executed.
None of them, literally none of them. Yes. So, yeah. So I guess if we have a plan that isn't going to do anything, I guess we could have one of those.
Well, I'm curious. I have a reaction that's very similar, but I'm curious about Travis and Kim.
You want to go Travis first?
Take it away, Kim. I got one to get them wound up, so you go ahead.
Okay, I'll do the pre-winding up.
Okay.
Let's stop having the people who've never developed or been in the trenches of broadband networks developing plans, because they're not talking to each other. You can develop a plan, but if it's not executable, who cares? Vice versa. So if we're going to develop a plan, could you just let the people who've actually done this actually be part of the process of developing said plan? The end. Thank you. Off to you, Travis.
Thank you. These are the same people that define broadband as 25/3, right?
Some of them are, but it'll also be people that define broadband as 100/100, and some of them who define broadband 100/20.
Pump the brakes. 100/100. What is this? 1972? Yeah. Oh, calm down, Mr. Mitchell, with your big aspirations over there with the government. So, I just want them to focus on the pothole out in the front of my house. That's all I really want government.
Well, we're talking about the federal government here, Travis, and you're betraying a little bit of...
Yeah. Maybe they can build back better the pothole out in the front yard. I keep driving over.
Unless you're on 394, I'm not sure that the federal government's going to do a lot for you.
I don't know. Isn't the market doing a fine job with it already? Considering that all the BEAD dollars are going to the incumbents, that should handle it, this once in a lifetime investment. And Chris, if they solve it, what are we going to talk about?
We'll find something, Travis.
Okay. All right.
We'll convert our fan into wanting to just talk about wings all the time.
The fan.
I have a reaction that I would say, is just that I fear that the 25/3 people would win in that cohesive strategy. And right now, I think we benefit significantly from a non-cohesive plan, from having some agencies that are doing a good job and others that aren't, and we can kind of focus where we can make progress. And I just worry that something that is agreed upon by all is basically written by Comcast and AT&T or something like that.
I like that. Is that what we're going to start calling them now? The 25/3s? Kind of like green textures, right, Kim?
Yep.
25/3ers?
25/3ers. I like it.
So yeah, I mean, I think, there are some people who would say that there's a lot of benefits from having the federal government all aligned and working together. And I'm just not persuaded that that is nearly as important, that is worth putting any energy into it, when we can instead, I think, focus on states and localities that are doing a good job, elevate those, and we'll probably see more progress there sooner than if we were to convince the federal government to do something. Because I feel like if we won the battle and we had a cohesive federal plan, I can guarantee you it would get $0 for funding and doing anything with it.
I went to a meeting this week here in Western North Carolina, and they're putting together a plan to get devices into people's house, refurbished devices. There were so many high-level players there, and there was so much excitement in the room. We do not need the federal government. Fact is, we can take care of this locally. And so
we need the federal government to write a check. I think that would help them, right?
The fact is, they're going to be able to do it without a check. Checks are nice, but they're not counting on a check. So they've decided we're just going to solve it.
I'll take a check. I mean, anybody want to give me a check? But I think this goes back to, I agree with Doug. We need to keep things local. And do we not have enough things happening in the federal government? Do people want more work and more things to write up? We've got a lot going on right now. So I think we need to focus on what we're going and letting these states and local localities do what they need to do with the money and not worry about a national broadband plan. Okay.
I mean, I think there are people, I'll just want to acknowledge that there are people out there who disagree with us, but we are 4 people that disagree on a lot of things here and there. But this is something that I think we all agree.
We have a unified front today.
Well, hold on.
Not for long, guys. Not for long.
Oh my, someone's primed for this show.
Travis, are you looking something up to just poke me with?
No. I was just wondering, are we, because I don't see it in the notes from the show, which, by the way, we get an email periodically about this. Are you referencing a feasibility study or something here? What are you?
No, this was the item that I just interjected this morning because that's
he
my
just
win.
made it up, Travis.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so related to that, though, I think we can get in this one in through pretty quickly. The ACP program, if you're getting money from BEAD, you're required to use the ACP program. ACP program could well not exist at that point, just have $0 in it. Somewhat entertaining in a very dark sense that Congress neglected to give it enough money to be around when the money actually came out. Any thoughts on that?
Well, we've known that since the day it came out, so it was really obvious. Yeah. No, except no one thought it would take this long to get BEAD out the door. But
Okay, so you can, if you have ACP and we just don't have any money, you qualify, right? That you're meeting the requirements. So
That's a good point.
you
No, I
just
think
have to
that's
say you're participating. It doesn't mean that any money's flowing out the other side.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. But I think there's a question. I mean, I'm really curious exactly how it was written because I think unintentionally, but if you're participating, it may mean that you're offering a certain plan. And if the federal government's not reimbursing you, you might still be on the hook. I don't know. It's going to be awful for small ISPs if that's the case.
It does require two things. It requires a low income plan and it requires you participate in the ACP. So you do have to have a low income plan that comes out of your own pocket.
So that's going to be curious to see how that moves forward.
Yes.
Who's monitoring this? I mean, I guess I have a question of this money is going to the states correctly. The states are going to disseminate it to the ISPs. Are the ISPs going to report it back to NTIA? Who's monitoring if they're following ACP and all of these guidelines?
For about 3 years, you report in nauseating detail back to the state. Once your network is completely built and running, that'll slow down and no one will monitor you. So the reporting for BEAD is like writing a book every month. It's unbelievably horrible. So,
and I think,
that's why Travis wants some of that money. So
I'm good. I'm good.
Let the record show that Travis is good. The other thing I want to note, there was a quick title popped up there, acpdashboard.com. If you want to know more about where the money has been spent, how much is left, and things like that, acpdashboard.com's got it for you, thanks to the lovely staff of the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. So moving on to a question about UTOPIA. I didn't even mention to folks what else we're going to be talking about today, but we're going to talk about fixed wireless and mapping, and universal service is going to be a chunk, and talking about particularly an article about fixed wireless in Maine that I think offers some interesting insight. And I'm just curious about a discussion around some of the economics and things like that around it. But before we do that, we're going to talk briefly about Bountiful, Utah. Kim, what is going on in Bountiful, Utah, a city of 45,000 people, something like that?
Something like that. It's a suburb of Salt Lake City. As my friend Bob would say, it's a leafy suburb. I had never heard of that until recently, but it is a city that in 2020 was approached by a lot of their residents during the midst of the pandemic, and they said they needed better broadband. And so the city did a very comprehensive approach of doing a city survey. They went down the routes of talking to all the local incumbents, talking to all the companies, hired a consultant to do some work, and they had a fiber committee. They did everything over the past 3 years. In the end, they decided they wanted to own the asset because they are a power city and they own their own power structure. And they decided.
When you say that, that means that they own a municipal electric.
Yeah, municipal. System. Yeah.
Different states call it different things.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Chris. And so back in June, they decided to go forward with creating Bountiful Fiber, and UTOPIA Fiber would be their operational partner, similar to how we're doing it in Yellowstone and in Idaho Falls. After they had agreed to do that, there was a petition that was notified of the city that some people were gathering signatures to put this item on the ballot because it's using taxpayers' dollars. Since then, it's one of the really big interesting parts about this is that the city couldn't have brought this to the ballot even if they wanted to, of how they were structuring this. So this is the only way to get it on the ballot. But the way this is going is non-bountiful residents, i.e. the Utah Taxpayers Association, is behind this signature gathering request. And they are going out there and asking people if they need to sign this, if they want to put this on the ballot. It has been said, and there's some videos out there of some unscrupulous tactics that some of these signature collectors are using, saying they represent the city. Others are saying that if you want fiber, you need to sign this petition. So there's a big misinformation campaign going on. So Bountiful right now is in the midst of that and really trying to get the word out to the residents of what is actually happening, and that this is not something that Bountiful City has tried to slide under the radar. They've had this subject has been brought up in 24 city council meetings. They have done a very comprehensive process. So it's just another attempt of big telecom trying to stop municipal broadband from happening. I actually had a conversation with the head of the Utah Taxpayers Association yesterday, and I said, if you're really for taxpayers, why don't you have problems with billions of dollars of money has gone to the big incumbents and they haven't delivered? And he said this, well, we hope they will deliver.
Yeah, maybe AT&T is going to finally build that DSL out in Mississippi that they got the $300 million for, and they forgot to do.
Yeah, I was like, a city doesn't put their hopes and dreams into that somebody will build for them. They have to take it into their own hands. I just said, I hope that I have $1 million when I go home tonight in my bank account. Probably won't happen, but I can hope for it. So it's an interesting situation, and it's what we're going to see as more and more money and more municipalities try to go down this road. They are going to be challenged. Big telco does not want to see their market share dwindle at all.
Soothsayer says she's not going to have $1 million when she goes home.
No, and I think it's worth noting, like the cable and telephone companies right now are quite worried. They are seeing significant losses to fixed wireless, not like devastating losses, but enough that Wall Street is pausing, right? I mean, I think when you look at the amount of money that is going to flow from the federal government to Comcast, Charter, and AT&T, Lumen, perhaps, Frontier, their share prices are quite low and actually getting lower in many cases. And so, I got to think that they are panicking about the perception that they're losing subscribers, and they're very worried about competition.
Absolutely. It's a terrible thing. I mean, I am all for us all being in a competitive marketplace if it's an even playing field. Travis and I can go against each other in a market, but if it's head-to-head competition where it's equal, I think that's fair. But when you're using money and you don't know where it's coming through this dark money channels, I just think it's nasty tactics and you're not playing above board. Let's play all on the same playing field, folks. Let's make it competitive.
Well, my first question is, who is the U.S. Taxpayers Association?
Utah taxpayers. They don't really have any information. They don't have any information on their board. They don't have any information really on who's funding it. We know from some of the previous things that we have seen is that Comcast and CenturyLink are some of their biggest funders on it. Okay. And it turns out the people who are gathering the signatures come from a company called Gather Incorporated, and one of the owners of that company used to be I think a legislative person from the Utah Taxpayers Association. So I think Bountiful, if anybody's curious and wants to watch some of their presentations, they've left their open house and some of their city council meetings where they dive into the research they've done on this initiative, and they have done a very comprehensive approach. And it's very interesting to hear and see what they found out when they really dug deep of who is behind this, but it is very dark.
I want to offer one of the comments that leaves me in very high esteem with Travis. Particularly, I just read a book about the history of Bechtel, a company that's one of the largest contractors in the world for building big construction and whatnot. And I didn't know a whole lot about it. I've held them in high esteem, knowing that they built the Hoover Dam on time and under budget and whatnot. And the founders of Bechtel and the people that play in that world are the ones that fund these kinds of organizations. They are companies that make almost all of their money off of federal governments. They get their big paydays, and they do not want to pay taxes on it, and they don't want anyone else to get any money, and they basically live off of government money and contracts that are mostly legitimate, but then they want to use a lot of that money to fund efforts to try to destroy government. It's an interesting kind of arrangement.
And it's been around forever. I mean, there was probably 100 municipal projects who have had almost the same thing happen to them. Every time it's a slightly different flavor, but they have been amazing at marshaling the forces to come in and try to stop these projects. And if you recall, last year, they actually stopped 3 or 4 projects in Maine. Mm-hmm. I mean, sometimes they're very good at it. Years ago, they stopped a project in North St. Paul, that little town that's in
it was like 12, 15 years ago. Yeah, those people got off the bus to vote, and they didn't even know what they were voting for. They just knew it was a no vote.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. And I think if it was Bountiful residents who were going out with this initiative and they were the ones who were collecting the signatures, I think it's valid. initiative. But right now, these are non-Bountiful people coming into Bountiful and dictating what their future looks like. And I just don't think that's fair. Maybe I'm like Chris, I'm too positive and think the hope and the light of all these things. But it's been an interesting experience because Utopia hasn't experienced this kind of pushback or been part of it in a very long time. And to be back on the trenches is kind of interesting and a little anxiety ridden.
Yeah, I mean, if to take the criticism seriously, if St. Paul or Minneapolis said, you know what, we think municipal broadband is really great, and there's so much success with it, we're going to put it on the ballot. We're going to just build a municipal network, starting next year, and we're going to solve all the problems. I would vote no against it. Like I would do that. It would be, I think it would be a very bad idea. In fact, I've opposed an effort here that was a public-private partnership because I did not think it was going to result in benefits. So I understand that people are not always in favor of municipal broadband, but this is the same thing we saw before in Longmont, which is a fascinating situation where everyone on the ballot supports a plan, and yet there's enough of this dark money that comes in to fool people that half of the people vote no on it, despite the fact that like every single person that's looked into it is basically in support of it. But there's a lot of people who can be scared into voting no on something like this.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing, is that we don't understand all the legalities and what cities have done. I wouldn't know unless I'd been at some of these conversations. So I think it's interesting because Bountiful went out and did a very comprehensive study, and it was over 50 to 60% of the residents were in favor of this. And I think what you see in cities who have the public power or the municipally owned electric utility, you see a lot more of those cities who are more game to go down this road because they see the benefits that came from having their own power system in their community. It's cheaper rates.
I mean, if St. Paul, the point I was trying to make that I didn't make very well is if St. Paul and Minneapolis did 24 meetings in which I saw they took it seriously and had a sense of what they were doing, I'd probably be supportive of it. but like, that's just not what's happening here. Bountiful did its homework. They made a decision. So any thoughts on this, Travis, before we move on?
I just find it amazing. It took them 3 years and 24 meetings to decide to do this, huh?
But that's what you want, right? You're talking about the people's money, right? I mean, I try to feel like when I'm spending other people's money, I have an obligation to do more due diligence than when I'm spending my own money. And so that's what we want to see, I think, from a local government. Chattanooga took many years to decide to move forward.
Yeah, I don't mind the 3 years. That's 3 years from the first concept. That's not too bad. It's really not, Travis.
Well,
again, governments move slow. Yeah. So.
No, that was 3 years of feasibility studies or just
no, that's 3 years, including the first year they probably did surveys and on and on and on.
They did surveys, then they hired a consultant, then they hired a fiber committee, then they issued an RFP, and then they looked at all the models that made sense for their community. I say this a lot.
Who's the incumbent there?
I was going to say, is it me or is it Kim?
Oh, I think it might be Kim.
That's not me.
Yeah. Oh,
Kim, we lost you, but now you're back.
Who's the incumbent there?
Who are the incumbents?
Oh, CenturyLink and Comcast.
Of course.
I just want to no conspiracy here or anything, but like
you went to say the big C name and that company knows you. Yes.
The city is very supportive. And I mean, I was at the open house last night, and it was really positive to see an open house by a city to have probably a little less than 100 people in the room. And you saw the passion, and you saw people who are live streaming it and who are watching it live. I think it's a very beautiful community here in Utah, and they have a lot of pride of what they've done. So I'm hopeful. I think we see where it goes, and I think that Bountiful is just the latest example, as Doug said, of what we're going to see over the next couple of years as some of these things get challenged. And I think we're going to see them get challenged in a bigger way, as Big Telco has never seen their market share get challenged like it is right now with the BEAD money coming out.
Temporarily, I think. I mean, we'll come back to this in a second. I wanted to give a chance to Travis to respond to the question that we got over Twitter, which was what kind of market share is there? Let's assume we're 2 years into a neighborhood that you've brought that competition to. Travis, what do you leave behind?
Oh, less than half. Yeah, that's why it surprises me that it takes so long to make these decisions. Who would not want it?
But when Travis leaves half behind, that includes people who keep the cable company. How many people keep DSL?
Oh, no, no, no. So the people that are left behind are the newspaper readers and the linear television watchers. That's the demographic we leave behind.
Right.
Anyone under the age of 50, we get them right away.
Travis, have you looked at going into? Let's just I'm picking something out. Like, let's just say for a second that you wanted to build in a large suburb of Phoenix while you're down there over the winter. Do you have a sense of what it would look like in terms of your market share in a brand new environment? What you might expect, where people didn't have years of having their neighbors talk about you?
Yeah, in a market that they don't know the provider, I'd be curious. Kim might have a better feel on this in the Utopia world, but it does take 2 to 3 years to really get your name out there. And but once your name is established, then it's on. Yeah. So
no, absolutely.
Yeah, but the first few years you do smaller builds, and then in year 4 you really ramp up your build. That's why I was looking at the geography of Bountiful. It shouldn't take more than 2-3 years to build that whole place out, and then you'll be the dominant factor. By year 5, you'll have basically everybody.
Well, and that's some of the concern too, is that if this delays and it goes to the ballot in December, it's what is the cost of this project has risen in that time with what we're seeing in this industry. It's not just that if it goes on the ballot, which I think that it would pass if it does go on the ballot, but that it raises the cost substantially and you just missed a whole construction season because we were supposed to break ground in July. So it is going to be an interesting, and maybe guys, maybe they don't have the signatures. We shall see. I think it's never a dull moment, but I think that you see, and I will answer your question, Travis. I think you can see, I think that's what you just mentioned is very important, is when you're building and to get those take rates, those really fast take rates in the first few years, is the customer service and the customer experience on the ground as you're building it out will help you get that brand name out there and help you with take rates in year 4 and 5 too.
Well, are you going to do aerial there, or are you doing all underground?
In Bountiful, I think it's a mix. I think it's a mix. I'm not really sure. I haven't been in those meetings. I've been in every other meeting. I get to go to the fun meetings about politics and not the ones about construction.
Yeah. The aerial guys have a huge advantage, both on deployment timeline and disruption of the neighborhood. So if it's one of these power companies that owns the poles, they should be able to slam this thing out pretty quick.
Related to that, Doug bet that I would not have fiber before the end of the summer. And I'll just note that nothing has changed since the last show. The cables I think they're waiting on a permit on a couple of poles that they hadn't planned to be on. They were planning to go underground in an area. So I don't know, Doug. I'm going to be blaming you if it happens.
I'm just telling you how the big companies take forever to get things done. Travis would have solved it quickly. So
yeah, sometimes we had a whole area of the city that we couldn't get lit up because we couldn't get across one street, right. And there was just nothing you could do about it. I was even whining at Chris one day. It was about 30 feet of boring, and then it would light up a whole area, and you just had to wait. You had to wait for the other guys to get their work done.
So, Doug, you wrote about fixed wireless access and mapping. What is your big concern? And I just specify that this is the big guys, the big mobile wireless companies.
This is about cellular. This article is about cellular. The problem is, the grants all say that if you have licensed spectrum and you deliver at least 100 down, 20 up, that's broadband and you're served. And these guys can pop up a cell site and then claim a large circle around it and basically claim that as a broadband monopoly. And in fact, if you start looking in detail at what they've reported in the FCC maps, they're grossly overstating the coverage area of where those things can reach. And so, because that is very different, it's a very different technology than fixed wireless. This stuff just beams out. It just goes in all directions. And what happens is, if you're really close to the tower, you can get really good speeds. A mile away, less. 2 miles away, a lot less. 3 miles away, it really peters out. And so their actual footprint's small. And the FCC said they were going to require those guys to do heat maps, which really shows the truth about where they're going, but they haven't done that yet. And so the fear is all these people are out here trying to create BEAD programs and grants, and right in the middle of your BEAD project, one of these guys can turn up a month before you file your grant, and they can go, "That's served now, sorry," and they will come into the grant office and go, "I'm sorry, I've put broadband in there now," and they will probably win. And the fact is, those guys shouldn't count as broadband at all because they don't try to serve everybody. And they also constrict your usage anytime they're the cell coverage. You know, they're there to serve cell phones. This is a hobby on the side. They sell this as extra revenue. But anytime that cell service gets a little bit heavy, they just tweak down the fixed wireless broadband. I mean, you could literally in the evening have it turned off if it got really heavy. And so that should not qualify as broadband. You should be required to have to serve and willing to serve everybody and not restrict your broadband. But that's not how the rules are written. And these guys are going to come running through and devastate. As hard as BEAD already was, they just made it that much more complicated. So, and it's that's a brand new technology. When IIJA was passed, this stuff wasn't even out in the field. And that's how new it is. They should have just said, this is experimental new. It doesn't count for BEAD grants. That would have been the easy solution, but that's not what they've done. So
this reminds me of it's not totally one-to-one, but I don't know if Kim and Travis have heard this, but I bet you have, Doug. It reminds me of the magic IP pixie dust from the debates of starting maybe 10 years ago and still more recently, which was you take a telephone service, which is regulated one way, you sprinkle in some IP pixie fairy dust, and hey, poof, there's no more requirements to actually repair or offer a reasonable service or this or that. It was the magic deregulatory. Right. This is like the magic regulatory technology of getting rid of competition, of hey, we've got this thing. And this plays right into something that John Chambers has been talking about, which I actually might invite him to join the show. I'm hoping he'll be able to join us as a guest on a show coming up to talk about this. But I feel like NTIA has really failed to grasp the challenges of working with wireless in that it is not about licensed pixie dust or not licensed. It was really about carrier of last resort. Can you serve everyone? The question should not be, can you serve a household with a high quality product? It is, can you serve all of the households in this area with a high quality product? And as I'm not an expert on this stuff, Doug, you know it much better than I do, but I just feel like that's missing from what I've seen.
That's completely missing it. And if we really want to now get 20 mean emails, we'll say the same thing is true for WISPs. Now we've done it.
So I want to come back to that and talk about that, but first I want to see Kim waving up there.
Usually they're not able to serve everybody. That's their.
And I would not distinguish that to WISPs, but I would say that it is more true of the wireless technology than others. But we can talk about that in a second. True.
It's satellite, everything.
Yeah, satellite especially.
Everybody can't serve everybody. So.
Ms. McKinley.
I was asking, like, they put a lot of restrictions on what technology could be used for BEAD. And why wouldn't they have put any restrictions on this? I just don't understand why they would be so adamant of what this money could be used for, but put nothing on this technology with it being so new.
Well, first off, states could use this money and give out grants for this. The problem is not what it's used for. These guys can block you from getting a BEAD grant. That's the problem. I mean, they can say, I'm sorry, that area has coverage. You can't get a grant.
It has 25.3. That's the issue.
Well, no, that's the issue. No, it has 120.
So they could say both. And so they
120. And
many states won't even get past 25.3. So if they can plausibly say 25.3, then that will stop it. In many states, in all states, there's a possibility of them blocking with 120 as well.
Now, with that said, a couple of the fixed wireless cellular companies think they're going to get a bunch of BEAD money. So they're going to try to win grants with this stuff too. So that's a whole second issue. And I don't mind that because the state broadband offices can decide if they want fiber or this, but they're blocking legitimate projects from getting grants.
I haven't read the challenge rules again since they were finalized. I don't remember them well enough from the proposal. Do states have discretion on this, or do they not have discretion on this issue?
The NTIA set the definitions, and they said that if it's can deliver 100 by 20 and it's got licensed wireless, that counts as served.
Even if it's only to one home and you can't do anything else technologically.
Well, they really haven't gotten specific. Yes.
There's still time to get it right, I would hope.
Well, I think state broadband offices, my theory has always been once they get the money, it's easier to ask for forgiveness and just give the money to who they want to give it to. And I think a lot of states intend to do that, but some of them are going straight by the rules. So, yeah.
I'm going to go back to my question to Travis. Who the hell is going to apply for this money with all these rules and
every day is something new that doesn't work. Every day this grant gets harder. Good question.
Are we still debating if we want to use wireless technology? Is that still? I thought that we solved that in episode 72.
No, I mean, I think this is something, and honestly, I don't want to keep coming back to it over and over again, but I think, particularly because John Chambers has been raising this, I think it's really important for people to understand what the issues are. And I actually think we could simplify it if we want to in ways that I don't think are accurate, that it's sort of like wireless is not as good. I don't think that's what we say. I don't think that's what we believe, but some people have gotten to that point.
Wireless can be awesome to some houses. So yeah.
And that'll come up more in the next discussion. Go ahead, Travis.
I got an idea. We'll use 25-3. For every 25 homes you hook up fiber, you can hook up 3 wireless. Then you are granted these free tax dollars to spend.
Well, the funny thing is that's about what they are going to do. Most of them say that their business plan is only to get 10% penetration. They're not going to try to sign up everybody.
We're talking about that for that's the next article that we're going to round the show out with.
Business, 10% penetration.
That's what we're about to talk about.
Are they going to wait around for more government money, or what?
Did you not read to the end of the email I sent you? The one
he did not read his email. Soothsayer says Travis didn't read it.
I skimmed over it, and I was like, "Oh, that's for Kim. That's for Kim. That's for John." I don't see anything for me, so I just
all the fixed wireless in Maine is stuff that I expect you to be weighing in on, Mr. Travis.
I'm ready, sir.
So I think this then leads into this issue. There's this light reading article that I thought was very good. Mike Dano, who I think we should bring on the show at some point. He writes a lot of good stuff.
He's very good.
Yeah. It's there's a lot of good people. We have a lot of good people writing in this area. Sometimes I think we focus. If
he's good, why would he want to be on this show?
Well, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Maybe he hasn't seen it. He doesn't.
This is not broadband breakfast, Mr. Mitchell. Come on.
So we have this article that I think will be showing up in the chat here briefly. But I thought it had a lot of interesting details. And so it's about Red Zone, which is a company that has been working very hard in Maine to provide service, and also working very hard to convince the state of Maine that it did not need to do anything in terms of funding fiber or anything else, that they were going to solve all of the problems of Maine with this wonderful wireless service. It's a major promoter of Tirana, and some of the big supporters of it have come after me personally in terms that I find hilarious. So a little bit of background on it. Jim McKenna runs it. He's a guy who has a powerful background of getting stuff done. But anyway, there's estimates in it regarding costs. And one of the things that has already come up is that he said that I can do well with 10% market share. Fiber providers, on the other hand, need to acquire up to 50% of the customers in their coverage areas in order to be profitable. And then he's saying that this is actually a bad thing. And he says that could be difficult in rural areas, suggesting that it would be a bad idea to put government money into fiber because the business model might not work if they don't get 50% penetration. I actually think that he's making the opposite case in some ways. So I see, Doug, you're nodding.
Well, he's making the opposite case because he's saying that if he only gets 10% of the people, he's done. He's happy.
What does he need money
it's
for?
Like, what about the other 90% of the people who don't have any broadband again? I've not known any rural fiber providers who only got 50%. I don't know any. None. Not a one. So that's crazy. They all get 60, 70, 80, 90%.
You're assuming that they are the one high quality provider in the area, right? I mean,
yeah, if they build fiber. Yeah, but yes.
If they're the only fiber provider, there's no cable. That's your assumption right now.
Yes, rural areas. He's talking rural. So yes, they always get 50.
I would even throw in and say, even if there is cable, you're going to get 80% in rural areas.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, that was my reaction as well. I was kind of horrified by that. And I think that's exactly what we've been talking about. And what I want to have John Chambers talking more about is this danger of funding providers that are only interested in getting enough to be profitable and not serving everyone. Now, I think personally, I think Jim, if he was here, would say that he does want to serve everyone and that we're not being charitable to him. And I would also say, channeling others, I suspect that they would say some WISPs are very much focused on getting to 100% of the market share. And that's where, like, I don't want to blanketly discriminate against wireless and say you can't do it. But it does seem like fiber is a technology where we more often see the providers, who are often co-ops, trying to get every last person connected.
Now,
I have a question.
I would suspect we took his 10% quote out of context. Yes.
Okay. Kim?
Yes.
So if he only needs 10% to be profitable, then he can lower his broadband costs and then serve other people, thus solving the issue of cost savings. What the broadband
he does
cost
offer an affordable plan. That's a part of the article I didn't quote here. I think he said his most popular plan is a low-cost plan that I think may be aimed at seniors. That is a 30 megabit plan or something like that. So, like I said, I don't think this guy is a fly-by-night operator who's trying to do harm to the community for his own benefit. But I do think he's wrong about key things and giving bad advice to the state of Maine. Leading off of that, Kim, is what I really wanted to ask Travis about. And so he talks about Tirana. Tirana, he's been one of the biggest boosters that I've seen of Tirana. And he says, first of all, he says that they have quarterly outages because of naval operations, which was more than they expected. To me, that seems like a significant issue for what is a lifeline service in many of these areas. People need to call 911, even if the Navy is in operations nearby. I hope that they have a solution for that. They very well may. But it says, but in recent months, Red Zone has embraced equipment from vendor Tirana for its unlicensed 3.5 gigahertz CBRS operations. I think that's wrong. I think it's actually been more than a year that they've been doing Tirana. And then this is what got me shocked. McKenna said Red Zone has been running Tirana equipment for around 2 years now. Oh, there it is. And currently counts hundreds of customers across roughly 15 cell towers.
Well, that's the 10%.
I couldn't believe there was hundreds of customers. Like, I mean, this is a high quality product. I mean, like, this is a competitive service. He's been telling Maine for years that he's the solution. He has fewer than 10,000 customers total and only hundreds of Tirana customers. Like, I was kind of like, what are we talking about here? Am I wrong to have that reaction? This is where I wanted context from Travis.
Yeah, if you read the article, the real value he has is he's got, at least from what I can tell, he's got 100 megahertz spectrum in the 2.5 band.
That's coming, right? He's going to be using that more effectively in the future.
That's
what he's talking about.
That's the real value. But I don't know. I did some simple math here. Maine has almost 1.4 million people.
Yep.
They all live right along the coast, almost all of them. So the rural people are very rural.
He's got 90 towers. My simple back of the napkin math says that he's going to be able to serve about 36,000 homes
without putting up new towers.
Yeah. So what happens to the rest of them?
Well, I presume they puts up more towers, is what he'd say.
Well, yeah, but there you can't just put up towers on everywhere and everywhere.
Well, so that's my question often for wireless people.
Yeah. So
he only wants to serve the rural areas, Travis, because literally 90% of the population of Maine lives within 5 miles of the coast. So I mean,
but a lot of those are fairly rural areas. Like you get up there to the area around. I mean, I think of the area right by come on. It's coming Rockport and the city that's just north of Rockport. I think of those as being more urban, but they would be small towns still considered. And a lot of people live around there and those sorts of areas. There's like a fair number. There's like a few 100,000 in the Portland metro, like within a 30, 40 miles of that, I'm guessing. And then the rest of the people are scattered mostly on the coast.
Okay. Yeah,
but still, if he can only do 36,000.
How about towers in the water? Could you put towers up on the co-located on wind power 3 miles off the coast? Are people going to object to that?
Oh, that'd be awesome. Your radio locks up and you got to go to the tower to fix it.
Plus, it has a 3 mile range.
The rowboat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Do you mind climbing towers? Here's your little rowboat to get out to the tower. Yeah.
All right. No, I appreciate that. That was a really dumb idea on my part, but thank you for that.
Technically, yes, but somebody's Netflix down and there's big waves. Then what do you do?
Mike Dano was thinking of coming on the show. He's not coming on now.
I just scared him off. This is right up there with I asked the guys from Colorado what they do about the elk. We should go back for that one, I think.
But see, here's the thing, Chris, and you've probably run into this in the WISP community, and I like WISPs, and we're a WISP, but if you can get a WISP that gets up to 10,000 customers, they're pretty happy. You know, there isn't usually, I don't ever get this vision of grandeur of trying to serve everybody.
Yeah, I mean, you've got NextLink and what are some of the other ones? There's the one up in
there's thousands of them. Yeah.
Well, no, but the ones that are operating at scale, like the private equity.
Not very many of them.
Yeah,
there's about 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah. So,
I mean, I know a few guys. They've got 2,500 customers, and they service them like really well, and they're happy to go. You know, it's plenty, but you know, you're not going to find a fiber operator that can really get by with 10,000 maybe, but you got to have aspirations to go bigger than that.
Mm-hmm.
Right, I agree, and that's where, and I just want to say, like, I'm always accused of being picking on wireless, but I think in many ways it does come down to the importance of the intentions of the owners, and then the capability of the technology. So there are WISPs who are going to try to get everyone, but I really worry about putting money into WISPs, knowing that it takes Herculean effort to get to 70, 90, 100% penetration in a rural area, just because of the technology.
Yeah,
I rather put my money into WISP every day of the week than put it into big telco. I mean, yeah, you don't know what the WISP intentions are, but I think they're more likely to deliver at the end of the day. I'm
with Kim. I would rather have the small guys try.
That'll be an interesting battle in Maine because it'll be consolidated as the incumbent there, and will the state give the money to consolidate it or to the WISPs? That's a really good question.
And if this guy's really sitting on a 100 megahertz chunk of 2.5, he can do quite some good. The question is, what's the next step? See, I would parlay that into a fiber wireless hybrid network myself.
And that's the thing that I find so puzzling about him is he is among the most militantly anti-fiber. I mean, I would say that he is not pro-wireless so much as he is anti-fiber from what I can tell of his comments.
You find that in the WISP community quite a bit. They get pretty drunk on their Kool-Aid and until you've run a WISP and then run a fiber network, it's hard not to get drunk on being a fiber, advocate, because they just work. And they deliver, and they don't cause problems, and you don't. It's just they're exponentially better.
So, any last comments on that? We can move forward. So, bumper topic.
Where can I get 100 megahertz at 2.5? Seriously, I'll take some of that.
I mean, I think it comes down to the schools, right? Ultimately, I'm guessing.
Okay. Why'd they give it to the schools? They're not using it for anything.
They give it to schools in the 90s.
Many years ago. Yeah.
Okay, the schools should have to give it up.
Well, the thing is that, I mean, this is the whole thing of how this works, right? Is that the schools had it. The federal government wanted to encourage them to give it up. The schools recognized that they were sitting on a pot of gold. Some of them wanted to use it for tech, like Imperial School District down on the border in Southern California, on the border with Mexico. They actually use their 2.5 gigahertz to deliver service to people all across the rural area. So they're using it. Others leased it out to Sprint back when the WiMAX days. Sprint was rolling it up, right? And others still weren't using it, and that is what I would think became available from the 2.5 gigahertz spectrum auction, right?
And then the big company that rolled it all up was Dell Computer, believe it or not. They're sitting on a mountain of it, yeah.
And they're just not using it right now?
Not used. They're looking. Yeah, they're trying to change the law so that it's worth more.
No, it's just so frustrating, right? I mean, like, we had this fight. We never talked about it on the show because I think the show started after it. But like the whole DSRC was at the dedicated short range communications, the 5.9 gigahertz that the auto companies were using in that fight. I was really worried that the auto companies were going to be able to keep sitting on that, just hoping it would be worthwhile as they refused to use it for anything. I really wish we'd see just a stronger effort to claw back this stuff when it's not used.
I agree.
It's supposed to be, working for all. We're trying to get the military to get off spectrum while there's just stuff that's just sitting there waiting for someone to get a bigger payday. It's just, this is the problem. So I'm not going to rant about it though.
Hey, Chris, I have a concern. Yeah, I have a concern. You might want to water your plant behind you at some point. Every time you go fix screen.
I've been laughed at by people who are asking why I have corn stalks behind me, and that is bamboo. It is my wife's bamboo, and I believe it was actually a gift from my mom to my wife for our wedding. So I believe it was recently watered. I think that's just what it looks like.
So for her wedding, she gave her dead bamboo. That's very interesting.
Yeah, my mom doesn't like my wife so much. So the one of the things I threw in for just fun and for stress relief on me was that Commerce Secretary Raimondo, someone that people have talked about as being one of the 462 possible Democratic candidates for president in the future. She came to Minnesota and said, absolutely, BEAD is going to solve all the broadband problems. And I don't know if you can see my hair, it's standing up because I just kept pulling at it and I was just so angry. Just, I think it's just malpractice. It's political malpractice. It's just really dumb politics. I mean, really dumb politics to make those exaggerated claims. So I want to share that and see if there's any reactions.
But I have a really honest question here. Do they even know that it's not enough money? I think that I have realized lately that this is such a nuanced industry that is so hard to really understand. Do they really believe it, or do you think that they're just?
I would think it'd be her job to know it, right? Like it's like if she has someone like her deputy secretary who's not telling her that, someone who wrote the speech and then reviewed the speech and didn't say, wait a minute, do we know this for sure? Like, I mean, we've been talking about this for years now.
I'm not saying we're not. I'm just saying that that's what I've heard lately. I've been talking to people about broadband. I'm like, just the talking points. You don't know anything behind the scenes.
Minnesota lost like $300 million to RDOF or something like that, right? I mean, like we got really screwed by the LTD effort. So maybe it would have if we had taken all those locations off. But there's tons of people out there who aren't getting any benefit from RDOF because LTD got the award, and then I think the FCC properly denied it to them. So it's unfortunate, but got hit by that pretty hard. So,
but it'll fall back to someone actually building a real network there, which is good. So, yep.
Yes, exactly. That's certainly the hope. And this is where, I mean, Doug, I think you're probably the best positioned out of all of us to know, but like, should I be frustrated with the fact that the FCC is not doing anything on RDOF? Like, I mean, should they at least be saying, hey, here's the plan. We're going to wait and see what happens with BEAD, and then we're going to do X, Y, and Z. They're just not saying anything. Right now, they're officially committed to doing another auction at some point.
You don't know. You don't want to hear what I think they're going to do. Mm-hmm. I believe that after the big guys win all the money, Travis, I think that they're going to give, instead of RDOF, they're just going to give it out as subsidies to them.
Oh,
yes. That's my so bet. That's my bet.
I mean, we need to get subsidies out to the tribes. I think. Like, I'm deeply worried, particularly if ICP goes away. Like,
the guys are saying, "Look, I took a grant to build this middle of nowhere county, and now I need money to keep running it." That's what they're going to all say.
And you think the FCC is going to be loaded up with commissioners who are predisposed to say, yeah, that sounds right.
Yes. So there will not be another auction. They'll just hand it. It'll be another CAF 2 is what it'll be.
You're hurting my heart, Doug.
I think I just took all the wind out of his sails.
Why do you think this? Why do you think that? Later.
I've already, because I've been reading all the discussions about it. They're already talking subsidies instead of, they believe that BEAD's going to solve it all. So now they're turning it all to subsidy. They were already having that discussion. Yeah.
There's Paul Krugman calls them very serious people. I think that's really an accurate sort of thing. Like the people who take themselves seriously and they know all this stuff, although they really have no idea what they're talking about.
We don't know anyone like that. That's lucky for us.
I mean, I'll gladly admit to what I think I know and what I'm still trying to figure out. But they haven't been reading Mike Conlow, I'm guessing, because Mike Conlow is just a piker who no one listens to, right? Because he doesn't even have the right job, or maybe, I don't know. But I mean, he's been like, his numbers seem pretty clear that like places like Nebraska, like you could spend all the rest of the RDOF money in Nebraska potentially, it looks like.
Yes. So we're going to end up with a lot of states who are short. Then what?
So we did have a question before that we did not deal with, and also we still have, I think if anyone wants to throw anything into the chat that they want us to discuss, we still have a little bit of time left. We had previously talked about consultants, and there was questions that came in about who do consultants work for? Doug, you get hired to do work by, let's just say, the city of St. Paul, because we know that you're not working for them. Who would you be working for? The city, mayor?
They usually tell me. And it could be any of the three. I've worked for all three of those. The interesting thing is you sometimes only work for one and the other two don't like it. A story I have to tell from years ago, a county in Virginia won a state grant to do a broadband study. So I did it, and staff hired me. We did all the work. I came down, I went to make the presentation to the board. Turns out they were all like 89 years old, and they're like, "Who the hell is this guy? We don't need broadband." And they threw me out of the board.
Was it because you were wearing a tie-dye shirt? Do you present with a tie-dye shirt?
I actually did not have a tie-dye shirt on for the presentation.
But you didn't wear shoes. You can admit this. You were wearing sandals.
I wore sandals, but they none of them even had computers. They didn't believe that you needed broadband, and so they're like, "Whose idea was this?" They were mad at staff, and they cut us off and threw me out of the room. They usually tell you who you're working for. That doesn't mean that you're working for the right one. So yeah,
right, because we've seen cities where the city council is really supportive of an effort. I mean, Cambridge is one of these where the city council was totally lined up, and the city administrator who had all the power in the arrangement said, "Nope, I'm totally opposed to this. I don't care what it is. Like, we're not doing it," and had no interest.
But sometimes I work for the city council. I'll do that quite often. That's who hires me. You work for one of those three. I rarely get hired by mayors. It's usually city council or staff. But they usually tell you. So.
But I think that's an important point that you just made, Doug, is that the city council and the city manager or whoever's over it needs to be in alignment on this project, because if one is for it and the other one against it, they're just wasting their money by hiring you, Doug.
Well, and they're wasting my time too.
Yeah.
Yes, they're wasting. I don't like to do the work that gets thrown away. It's a waste of everyone's time. So.
Another question that comes up is your job to say yes or your job to say no? Because I would guess in half of the time, let me ask you this. In more than half of the times, do you know what the expected answer is that the client wants?
I usually know what they want. It doesn't mean I know what the answer is going to be till I finish it, and then I tell them the truth. I'm no longer 40 years old, and I'm no longer caring if they hire me after it's done. I tell them the absolute unvarnished truth at the end. They don't often like that. If I say it's not going to work here, you can't do it, that's not an answer they like to hear. But
so let's go back. I'm curious, but
other consultants don't do that necessarily. So there's some consultants who are famous for not doing that. So,
right, I feel like there's some consultants who literally won't even say yes or no. They'll just give you the slide deck and
right. Correct.
I remember back, and I appreciate if you don't remember this, but when the Renville Sibley was first working on their approach with the joint powers agreement and the county involved, you did the numbers, and I was a little bit surprised in that you came back and basically said you need 70% within 4 years and you can make it work. And I kind of expected you to say next, and that's not going to happen because this was like 2011, 2012-ish, maybe it's 2013. But I felt like in that case, like you saw a path that I didn't. And I'm just curious if you remember that.
The reason that I thought it could work there is that area is almost all farmers and they almost all wanted it. So I believe they would have gotten their 70. So yes.
Okay.
But there's many places where you won't get that number. But yeah, I thought they would get it. So
they had mailed out information to every single household within the footprint, and they had 100 local meetings. It was impressive.
Yeah. So they had the support to get very close to that number.
Mm-hmm.
Doug is doubling down on his projections back in the day, Chris. He's not backing off.
I am a retroactive soothsayer.
Well, did you do the business case then for them that they did move forward with?
Yeah, except they never raised their money and the business case fell apart.
Well, exactly. So they hit the number of subscribers that they needed. So you did your job correctly, but they mangled the finance and they ended up
the finance and they never.
They're still doing well. I mean, they're still
all
doing
right.
well, but they had to
Yes.
tap into taxpayer dollars. And I
Yes.
was at the meeting where they announced that they would. And people's number one question was not anything about the taxpayer dollars. It was, when am I getting my network?
Right.
That's what they wanted to
Right.
know. So,
Exactly.
yeah. Do you remember all of your clients that well, or just the fun ones?
I remember 90% of them pretty well. I'll never
Yeah.
forget the one who threw me out of the council.
All right. So is there any other topics? So I don't see anything in the chat room except Ezra's laughing so hard he's crying.
Oh, wow.
Really? Of us?
Well, here we got a comment that we can pick up on. Jay Hankey, friend of the show. A lot of consultants struggle in the middle mile parts of fiber to the home projects and the benefits of IXPs. Thoughts on that?
It all depends. Wow, that's very local situation. Some places that makes sense. Some places you can't afford to build middle mile. It just depends where you are. So,
But
this gets back
you need to think about it. You need to think about it before. A lot of them think they can just build the fiber network in their community. And
I've seen people build it and go, now how are we going to get connected? Like, you kind of should have asked that question a little while ago.
Remember last time we were arguing with Chris on that, and he's like,
No, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Connections everywhere. You just, down on the
No,
corner,
that's what, yeah. We were coming to virtual blows over it, and because like. That's the thing, is that I feel like it's a similar question to the supply chain, in that like everyone talks about this, and I have yet to find someone. I mean, that Doug's case is the one that I've heard of, but most people are. I'm like, well, what do you do? And like I was talking to one provider. I don't think I'm going to share who they are, but they were like, yeah, for the first 3 years we have to overpay this awful connection, but then after that we'll have the revenue we need to build our own, or to get where we need to go. But it's a few years of ugly pain.
And as long as you know that up front, that's fine. As long as you've understood that, yes. So some of them do not.
Ryan and I were talking about that before the call here. I mean, when you first start out and you're just buying transit from a carrier, your costs are very high. When you can finally get peering at an internet exchange is when your per packet or your per bit cost goes down. But that takes a while. And if you're out in the middle of nowhere, your cost there could be a long, long while. So.
Yes.
That's why small ISPs can't just start up with this BEAD money, because they have to have the volume to make that work. I mean, there's just so many aspects when we think about how easy it is and why don't people get in this business. It's because of all these nuances that people don't think about.
BEAD is not going to finance any startups. There's not a chance a startup's going to get it.
Yeah. So what percent of the dollars in BEAD are going to the incumbents? I forget what we decided.
I think you said 95%. And
no, he's at 99%. I'm pretty sure he's up
there. My percentage keeps climbing. It's getting way up there.
I'm at like 90. I'm at 90. I think I'm at 90. What are you at, Doug?
I'm kind of leaning towards that number now myself.
I'm saying 75. I think the co-ops are gonna do well. I was at like 65 or 55 before, so I'm climbing also, but I'm still lower.
Whoa! No! You got to be the other end. 10% is what Mitchell told me.
10%. I'm never gonna stop buying wings.
Yeah.
The reason it won't be 90 is there are a few states who are going to bend over backwards to give it not to the incumbents. So that's going to keep the percentage.
So for our analysis, let's not talk about Vermont, right? If we're going to figure out who got this right in 4 or 5 years, when we have enough numbers to go over it, we will not count states like Vermont that do it right. We'll just look at the states that are more normal.
Can we each get one guess of what state does it right? And then we can compare in episode 732 who did it.
I'm going to say Vermont. I'm sticking with Vermont.
Vermont. Kim, who's going to do it right?
I'm just going to go for the long game here. I'm just going to go with Texas.
Texas. All right. Doug already knows. Look at he knows.
I have no idea. My problem is there's not very many broadband offices who are good enough to truly grasp all these rules yet. I mean, these are the most complicated, unbelievable rules.
You think CPUC will get it right? They've got the specialization at least.
No, they're going to give it all to the big companies.
I think California is going to struggle with their politics.
Yes.
Of being California.
They've always defaulted to the big companies, even though their intentions are not to do that. That's where they always end up. Texas is not a bad pick. They got a lot of money, and they also have $1.5 billion of their own money to put in. That's a lot of money. They got
a lot of dirt, though. They got a lot of dirt.
But they have a lot of aerial too.
They also have a lot of flat places, which are good. So, yes.
Travis, do you have a state?
I'm going Guam. Those guys got it figured out in Guam.
Until the next
is just trying to get a junket.
No, I think Guam knows what they're doing.
You want to go investigate?
Yeah, I think they've got the Guam broadband department's got it figured out. They know what they're going to do. They're going to get everyone hooked up, and they're going to be the screaming success of the BEAD program.
Doug, you have a quick state? I want to move on.
No, I really don't. I have never thought about that. I don't have anyone.
Okay, Doug's getting Alaska.
Not North Carolina.
North Carolina will do it well. It's going to mostly go to charter, but they're going to give it all away.
That is not doing it well. The last it was a couple other things. We have
Okay, I do have one. I think Virginia is going to do very well.
Oh, that's a good call. Yeah.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier also about, I was so excited when I got into this business and I was starting to learn more about it. And I learned what a committed rate was and the burstable and how you paid on the 95th percentile of the speed that you used and the negotiation around getting your transit. And then Travis told me that doesn't happen anymore, that's all old news. So is that the case? Is that all old news?
Oh, sure. Sorry, I was thinking about Guam. What did you say?
The old model with the 95th percentile, that's just old news. Now you just pay for the big pipes.
Well, again, I haven't bought like a 1 gig internet circuit anymore. Actually, maybe Jay can pipe in here, but generally now we just sell them based either 1, 10, 100. We don't really monitor the bursting anymore. Kim, are you guys buying transit in fractionals anymore?
I don't know. They don't let me know this kind of stuff, Travis. Are you really asking me this?
Yeah.
The answer is almost nobody does. Again, unless you're in that rural. If you're in those rural markets where you have to pay the incumbents, you're very careful about what you buy. Otherwise, you just buy a big pipe now. So, yes.
Yeah, that's what Jay says there. That's popping up.
Yeah.
Too.
So just to give you an idea, to go from one side of Minneapolis to the other, when we first got in business in around the year 2000. $45,000 a month for 45 megabit.
Wow.
Nowadays, hundreds of gigabits for next to nothing.
And that was a DS3, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. OC48.
OC48. Okay.
Yeah. Just the line card for a Cisco was $125,000.
Oh yeah, I remember.
So let's we talk about how expensive things are today. Man, stuff's cheap today compared to what it used to be.
Right.
Yeah. We have a question about eminent domain, invoking it over telecommunications system infrastructure. I've always been nervous about this. I have strong feelings about eminent domain and liberty. And I did find it odd that in Minnesota, it takes a supermajority vote of 65% to build your own network, but you can condemn the municipality, the assets of the existing provider with a 50% vote. I felt like that was a sign of just something being a little bit off. Although I think we can appreciate that doesn't happen very much. People fortunately don't vote for that.
I don't see eminent domain used very often. Very, very seldom does anybody make that happen anymore. It's so rare that you hear about it. It makes news. I mean, almost everywhere has at least one route of public access, and if you can't get down a private road, you just don't go down the private road anymore. So,
yeah.
I mean, I can't remember the last time I heard a state or a county invoke that.
Australia did it.
Used to do it. They used to do it. Yeah.
I have a whole team underneath me that just deals with contacting HOAs who are on private roads and getting the agreements. And I mean, it's a full-time job of how much we're building and making those relationships to make sure we can go down them. And sometimes we can't, but in 2 years, they might call back up and say, come. And then at that time we will. But it is, it's an interesting process to get all that documentation for those areas.
But you've never considered forcing yourself. And I mean, it's a losing battle.
I think that's it's a sad statement of public policy. I mean, Mitchell Shook also noted that this was done, as part of electrification. I have deep concerns about the misuse of it. But at the same time, I have to say that like we defer to the investor-owned utilities, and I'm speaking more about electric here than anything, way more than we should. Like they rip us off left and right. They never face a penalty for it hardly. They're bribing people in state after state, and we don't expect them to actually pay a price for that. I think like there should be some role in which the public says, you know what, like we're going to take this over and we're going to pay you fair market value or whatever, but we're going to take it over. And I think we should be able to do that, even though I'm certainly nervous about its application.
Yeah, but rural electrification was done by co-ops, and they were given the right of eminent domain, because if you can't go down the road, that meant 500 people passed it and didn't get electricity. They did invoke it a lot. And again, they only invoked it along the right of way, along the edge of the road. But they. Well,
I was going to say, and aren't we benefiting from that today because we're
using? Well, and we still have those same right.
Yeah, we still have the right of ways that we're using. Yeah.
I mean, I think this is where even us advocates. Go ahead, Kim.
I was like, you just didn't have the lobbies back then that would fight against this that you would today. I mean, you can say this all the time about the electrification of America and what we did. It's a totally different game that we're playing in today. Ways,
I mean, it's actually more similar than you might think.
There was a lot of people against electricity.
I mean, that's the thing is that I actually think we might be moving into that age more. I mean, that's what gives me hope and why I'm, not just submitting my resignation after Doug's comments about RDOF today. Is that I think we are heading into that era. But the electric companies were monopolies that were even more hated than the cable and telephone companies are today. I think we'll be curious to see in 5 years how much people hate Comcast and AT&T. But the reason that we have the co-ops is because of Harold Ickes. And I love telling this story, but Harold Ickes was a Republican that FDR put into office to run the Interior Department. He was in charge of figuring out electrification. And when I think it was Edmund Cook or someone like that, I forget his name, came to him with a plan and said, basically, we got to work with the electric monopolies or else we're not going to get this rural thing done. And Harold Ickes literally said, I won't work with the sons of bitches, and said, find a different way. And that's where, Pennsylvania had experimented with co-ops previously. And then we had we launched into co-ops in 1935 without the kind of robust assumption that it would work. We didn't know it would work. Like it was something that people thought was important and willing to try. And my last comment on that is, I think even those of us who are huge internet evangelists, we don't even have the courage of our convictions to say it's that important. I think we take the corporate power too much for granted that we can't do anything about it. We try to work around it. But at a certain point, like I actually think the people are more with us than we might think to actually say, you know what, we should condemn some of this stuff. We should take a little bit more power to get these networks out and make sure that everyone has high quality internet access. It's that important.
Travis, I think that was very close to a rant.
Well done.
I'm counting it.
Well done.
But Chris, I will say this, and this is one of the things that I struggle with is, yes, I think the people are on our side, but nobody understands the politics, regular people behind broadband and what is really out there. So yes, I agree. If we can communicate what's really happening behind the scenes in broadband, people would be absolutely on our side. But how do we get that word out there to communicate that, to rally the troops?
Yeah. I think that's the task. So I think we're out of time. It was a fun discussion. I think we touched a lot of different things. I'm hoping that we'll have a spicy guest next time. I think we'll be back in 2 weeks. And then I don't know about August. August is going to be interesting. August is going to be painful. We might only have one show in August. And Ezra's right. Ezra says start a podcast.
Travis,
what the world needs is another podcast.
Travis already said he can't make the August show. He's not going to do that.
Yeah.
And I don't know. We'll talk more about this. I might be backing out of Orlando, even though Travis is going. It's the only reason I'm going at this point. It'd be so I can hang out with Travis and Kim together. I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. August is so bad. What do you mean
you're not going?
August is so bad. You didn't answer my green text about August.
I don't figure it out. You're a green text friend. You go to the bottom of the list. Kim already explained it to you.
This is where he just broke the news to you, Travis.
I'm gonna buy an iPhone to just communicate with Travis. It'll be worth it.
If anyone's down at the Midwest Peering Summit Monday, Tuesday, though, I'll be there with Mr. Jay Hankey hanging out. So stop by and say hi.
That seems like a really fun event to be at.
I bet it will be.
It's going to be super fun, and we can tell good stories about Mr. Mitchell then.
So I think we're going to have a show in 2 weeks-ish, and then maybe one in August, and then we'll be back in September, and maybe we'll go a little crazy to get caught up. I don't know. Or else, y'all, I give you permission to work with Rye to do one without me. But August is looking
I love this idea. I love this idea.
I think we could probably make this work, guys.
I think my colleague Sean would love to step in, and he'd probably do great. Or Rye could even step in and make someone else produce it. But I'm not saying I'm replaceable. I'd welcome that because the audience needs the wisdom of the three of you. I'll say that.
Oh, this is going to be awesome. Okay. See you, Chris.
We're going to figure out a plan. This might be one of my last shows, but until the next one, it's been another fun episode of Connect This.